Hello everyone, and welcome back to another week of the Backlog Bunker. This week we're talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth first, because I finally got to playing it, eventually. And so far, I can't say I spent enough time with it to really know how I feel about some of the gameplay changes, like the addition of, well, quote, air combos. They're not quite air combos the same way they work in a lot of other action games, but they're more than what 7 Remake had, so I'll give them that. Things like the perfect parry are just a straight-up upgrade, because blocking can only mitigate damage in Remake, but then they had the masterful idea in Remake Intergrade to only give Yuffie perfect parries, so now everyone can do them. Otherwise, I feel mostly the same about Rebirth as I did about Remake, but that's for better and for worse. The worse being best exemplified by a term created by Yahtzee Croshaw of Zero Punctuation and fully emblematic fame, that being a ghost train ride. Which, to describe it shortly, is basically a cinematic set-piece game. There are 5.5 billion breaks from the combat so you don't get bored of the main gameplay loop, God forbid. Cutscenes can't just be cutscenes, they have to be cutscenes that pretend they aren't cutscenes because you have to press buttons while you do them. Climbing sections, squeeze-throughs, puzzles that aren't really puzzles, the works. And it's not like I'm surprised it's still like this. Gamers at large generally like Rebirth, and gamers are famous for not really caring about this kind of stuff, so again, not really surprised. I'm more so just disappointed, partially because it means I'm gonna have to do all the bullshit that I didn't like from Remake over again in this game, but also because it means I'm not gonna be going for 100% in this game. If I enjoy a game, and going for 100% is generally pretty simple, I will go and do it because I like the game and I want to play it as much as I can. But unfortunately, both Remake and Rebirth fall into the camp of games that I like playing, but that I would never want to 100% because it means replaying them, and replaying them would be fucking awful because it means I have to do all the boring shit over again. Now, I did get 100% in Remake, but that was because A, I'd committed myself to doing it before I had realized what playing the whole game over again really meant, and B, by the time I had realized what it actually meant, I was already so far along in that I might as well just finish it at that point. But just having played the Nibelheim section of Rebirth, I already know that I don't want to redo the Nibelheim flashback where you have to crawl as Cloud. I already know that I don't want to have to redo the moving the vacuum cleaner over to collect the Mako or whatever. I only had to play it for 2 hours, and I'm already dreading the rest of the game being like that. And that's just gameplay stuff that I don't want to do. Let's not even get to any of the story stuff, or 7 Remake Project brand bloat that we're going to get to eventually. On a more positive, but generally still a pretty negative note, I did finally beat Mega Man 6, which means I'm done with Classic Mega Man. Though I did try Mega Man's 7, 8, 9, and 10, and I wasn't really happy with what I saw. I would say that 7 was probably the worst of them for a few reasons. For one, it looks awful, just absolutely terrible. Super embarrassing for having come after Mega Man X. For 2, I am not in the mood to have this many fucking cutscenes in a Mega Man game. My Super NES platformer should not be starting out with a cutscene that I cannot skip, is an hour long, and sounds like it was written by people whose instruction was to convey as little information in as many words as possible. And for 3, Mega Man is ungodly slow in this game. Now, he wasn't exactly a speed demon in the NES games either, but the difference is that in the NES games, Mega Man took up much less of the screen. Because Mega Man is smaller, if you want to get him, let's say, halfway across the screen, you have to do it in less time. The Mega Man 7 version takes up far more of the screen, meaning that if you want to get him halfway, he has to go the same distance, but in more time. So, TLDR, not excited for 7. Conversely, 8 was probably the best of the next few games, though not for a lot of reasons. It's really just minor improvements on 7, like the fact that Mega Man's a little bit smaller, meaning he's a little bit faster. The game certainly looks far better, and it didn't bombard me with a story this time, but a little bit faster is still pretty slow by Mega Man standards. And like I said, at the end of the day, just a better 7. 9 and 10 also pretty much come in a pair, because their whole thing is they're trying to emulate the NES games, a little bit too closely. Now, it might have just been the stages that I played, but it felt really weird to me that both 9 and 10 tried to emulate NES game design, like all the jank and cheese. Both 9 and 10 looked at the NES games, saw that thing that happens where you walk off screen and then an enemy immediately respawns, and saw that as a feature, not a bug. So all those comments I made in my review of Mega Man 6, being like, oh, I'm so glad to be past all the NES jank and bullshit, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to come back to it for 9 and 10. Though 10 does get a slight boost from doing something that Mega Man really should have done since like 4 or 5, which is that you can play as other characters, namely Proto Man. Of course, as far as the classic series goes, Mega Man and Bass did this quite a few years before Mega Man 10 even came around, but that one's not in the Legacy Collection, so I'm gonna pretend like it doesn't exist, for now. Then finally, on a more minor note, I played Balatro because I had a friend recommend it to me. Well, I had a lot of people recommend it to me, but this friend was the one who really wanted me to get into it. And yeah, sorry gamers, hate to break it to you, but I still don't like roguelikes. Especially not roguelikes that have multiple layers of luck factored into them. Of course, I don't like the random weapons in Dead Cells, but at the very least, when I get good weapons in Dead Cells, I get good weapons and I play the rest of the game. But in the case of Balatro, or for a very similar example, Dicey Dungeons, you have to not only get good jokers, but you also have to get good planets, but then you also have to get good arcanas, and you also have to get good blinds, and then on top of all of that, you get to get good hands in the actual games themselves. Of course, with 52 whole cards, the hands themselves are usually the killer. Blinds like only one hand or the wall essentially mean that whatever hand you get has to perfectly synergize with the jokers you have, as well as, being a good hand in and of itself. I've had many runs end so far on examples like having a flush or a straight that just didn't synergize with my jokers, or the other way around, where I had a really good synergy with a certain amount of cards, but it was like 2 pairs, so it just wasn't very helpful. Oh, and then of course, silly me, I forgot to mention a different factor of luck that goes into it, that being what you get in the shop. Like most roguelikes, I won't call the game bad, but it certainly doesn't get my respect for being like this. And then as for the weekly topic, this one's kind of a short one because this isn't really a topic and more of just an observation, let's say, which is that I've seen a lot of people describing a problem with Mario Kart World, that being that where's the DLC? There's just no DLC yet, which is a very strange thought to have about an $80 video game. Of course, DLC in and of itself could be 50 billion backlog bunkers worth of weekly topics, but to keep it brief and only to Mario Kart World specifically, the interesting thing to note about this game is that I think the reason a lot of people are fine with getting DLC for it, if not, outwardly just straight up waiting for more DLC to come, because of course it's gonna come, it has to, right? Is because a lot of people actually didn't pay $80 for this. They paid for the bundle, which made it $50. In general, I think people would be a lot more sour on the Nintendo Switch 2 if Mario Kart World had been $80 for everybody. And yet, mysteriously, despite the fact that $70 video games is a pretty big back and forth that goes on to this day, the world's first $80 video game seems to have flown a bit under the radar. Am I saying that Nintendo strategically overproduced the bundle to make everyone buy that instead of the normal Switch 2, so that everyone wouldn't think about the fact that the Mario Kart World is actually an $80 video game, being disguised as a $50 video game to make everyone think they're getting their value's worth, but in reality, they're just getting scammed into buying a $500 console instead of a $450 one? Yeah, pretty much, that's what I'm saying. But hey, I could always be wrong. I'm just a nudicer, and I thought it was interesting. That's it for this week. Get out of here.